Hey everyone, welcome to Sketch Day. I'm Spencer, where every day we go over something related to drawing and visual communication. And as many of you are aware, I did a video last week covering the iPad Pro that was just released, and I've got one here with me today. And I am blown away by the feedback and support that you guys have given me by subscribing and sharing that video. So thank you. There were a lot of good questions that came up in the comments and email feedback that I received as well. And one of the most asked questions was, can this thing be used for work? Is this useful? And the short answer is yes, it can be useful. The long answer is it depends. It depends a lot on how you work. So what I'd like to do today is go over an app that I've been using quite a bit on the iPad Pro, which is called Procreate. And you may have heard of this app. It's $6.99, which is a killer deal considering how much something comparable on the desktop costs, like Photoshop or Sketchbook Pro, other drawing apps like Corel Painter. This thing is pretty powerful. So I just want to go over a few features and talk about how this relates to kind of how I work and see the iPad Pro fitting into my workflow. So Procreate is a simple app. It's right here. I've been using it so much that it's on my main bar here on my iPad. Tap it, you can open it up. And when you open it up, you're presented with a main screen that has your canvas. And like most iPad or iPhone apps, you can pinch to zoom and manipulate this canvas, okay? And this canvas is representing whatever setting you set when you set it up. If you tap this button in the top left corner called Gallery, you'll be presented with, actually let me zoom in just a little bit here. Here's a gallery of all the things that I've worked on, or there's also some pre-loaded imagery that you can check out. So if I tap this little bird guy here and take a look at it, you'll see that I have just a pre-done image, okay? Something that someone created in Procreate. Just a sample of how cool it is. If I want to make a new file and I'm in this gallery view, I can hit this plus button at the top right corner, and there's some presets here. So for example, I've got Retina, Square, 4K, 1080p, and A4. A4 is similar to, if you're in the US, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, or if you're in Europe, your standard letter writing sized paper. And it also gives you an idea of how many how many layers you can have per document. And that's perhaps a limitation of the hardware. I'm not exactly sure, but that is a knock against the iPad Pro, where as in Photoshop on a desktop, you could have hundreds and hundreds of layers. So you do want to be mindful as you create your document in Procreate of managing your layers depending on the size of the document. For example, if I pick this A4 document, which is a lot heavier in terms of resolution, I need to be mindful of how many layers I'm going to be creating. The other thing is, if I create a document, I can also import an image from the clipboard, or I can specify custom dimensions for that document, set it up here, and click OK, and I'll have that document. So the other thing that's really cool, okay, so the iPad Pro, you can pinch to zoom and rotate your canvas, or you could, quite literally rotate the iPad in your hands, just like this, and orient it to the way that you like to draw. So you've got that flexibility built in. Now the interface is optimized for touch, meaning I don't really need a keyboard to run this. There's a lot of criticism toward the iPad Pro and other tablets, frankly, about them not being full computers. And I think in a lot of ways, it's not so much that you can't do real work on an iPad. It's that personally, for me, I have a lot of habits and a lot of shortcuts. I've been doing digital sketching and rendering for a long time, and Photoshop, there's a lot of muscle memory built into how I use a desktop computer. So in the last week, I've spent a lot of time with this app, and as I've just given into the functionality and usability that is baked in, I've been able to start to build that new muscle memory, okay? And I'll show you a couple things that I've done here over the last week, just kind of noodling around. But the other main items in the toolbar, I'll go over that first, and then we'll get into some of my sample work. I have a configure or tool button, which allows me to import an image or take a photo. Or paste from clipboard. So if I click import image, I can go to my photos and look at my camera roll. And let's say I want to pull in this leaf. I can tap that leaf, and now I can pinch to zoom and scale this up and place it in my canvas if I want to. Okay. If you want to undo something in Procreate, simple. 2 fingers, tap on the screen and undoes it. If you want to redo the action, 3-finger tap will redo what you did previously. Okay, so really handy shortcut, 2-finger tap or 3-finger tap. The other thing you can do is you can turn on a perspective guide, and you tap to create a vanishing point. You can move this around. You can play with the thickness of the lines or the opacity as well. You can add vanishing points, undo. So now I have a 2-point perspective grid here. Got my horizon line, I can hit done. And now my brush lines don't snap to the grid, but it's a great way if you are just trying to, sketch something in a 2-point perspective, at least have somewhat of a guide to sketching that thing out. So if I wanted to sketch, some sort of building or structure, for example, I've got these lines as a guide. So pretty handy, pretty nifty if you're wanting to have this guide as a help. Okay, so I'm going to clear this layer and let's get rid of these guides. So turn that off. That's actually an experimental feature that's not baked into the $6.99 app, but you actually have to pay a little bit extra to unlock that feature. I think it's $1.99 or $1.50. In any case, pretty fun. You can flip your canvas, copy, all that stuff that you're used to. You can share. One of the cool things about Procreate is you can actually hit share your artwork, and you've got a Procreate file, PSD, JPEG, PNG. If I hit one of these, it'll export it, and then I can pick what I want to do with it. So send in a message, mail, airdrop to my computer, for example. So that just sent it over to my computer. So you've got some pretty powerful options there. You can also export a video, and the video export actually creates a video clip of your drawing so that you can replay that and see it. And I'll get back to that feature a little bit later. Here we have options for devices. So if you have a stylus that's not the Apple Pencil, you can enable those here. There's also preferences that you can go through. And if you're in trouble and you need help, there's a help section. Wow, so that's all in one button. Pretty cool for an app that costs $6.99. Like I said, it's pretty fun, pretty amazing. For your layers, there's this magic wand button, which allows you to adjust your layer opacity, Gaussian blur, motion blur, perspective blur, which are kind of like filters in Photoshop that you can use. You can also adjust hue, saturation, brightness, color balance, and recolor. This little tool, the S, is actually a selection tool. So if I click and draw, I now have a selection. And once that's selected, I can paint inside that selection with my brush, for example. And then if I tap it again, it deselects. So there I've painted inside of that selection. If I want to reselect, I can just hit undo, and now I'm selected again. Now if I hit the arrow button, it allows me to take that selection and move it around, and I can scale it up. So if I wanted some crazy texture for my drawing, I could scale that up or down or whatever I want to do there. So again, I'm just going to clear this layer. All right, so the arrow tool, if there's something on the layer, it allows you to manipulate it. So over here we've got brushes. Let's go back here. There's a bunch of default brushes. I've created my own brushes as well, which is something you can do in this app, which frankly is pretty amazing, again, for an app that is $6.99. Disclaimer, they are not paying me for this promotion at all. So this is just my experience, completely objective and unbiased about this app. There's the pencils, which are your kind of where you start out. I created this personal brush. I call it the Spencil. And it's just more like an inking brush, as you can see. It has the tilt functionality that's built into the Apple Pencil as well. But the default brushes, okay, so here's the HB Pencil, which you've seen me do in other videos where you can tilt it on the side, and depending on how much you tilt it, you can adjust how much of that lead is shading on the screen. We have inking brushes as well. So I created a studio pen, or modified it rather. I tend not to use these as much because I just haven't had the best of luck with them yet, but you know, I'm open to everything. There's some painting brushes. For example, here's a water looking kind of brush that you can use. You can, let's see, we've got this Nico roll brush. Not sure what I'd do with that, but in any case, lots of options there for your brushes. You've got artistic brushes as well, like this oil paint brush. Okay, that's pretty cool. So if you're, you know, doing some kind of oil paint and you wanted to have some texture there, you can apply that using that brush. Airbrushes, which I tend to use more. Okay, so varying the pressure gives you less flow, and varying the angle as well will adjust and manipulate that flow. But there's also different types of airbrushes. So we've got a hard brush, soft brush, and then this modified soft airbrush, which I made to be a little bit more subtle. Well, what if you want to adjust some brush settings like size and opacity? That's actually here on the side. So with the slider on the top, I can tap and drag that up, and I've got a nice soft airbrush, similar actually to the airbrush that you'd find in Sketchbook Pro. And that's kind of why I created it, because I do like the airbrush in Sketchbook Pro. You can also adjust the opacity of that brush, so if you want more flow, okay, and you can see there's a buildup with this brush. If you want to create some nice subtle gradients, you can do that there. But you can adjust the opacity and the size of the brush. There's also the undo and redo commands that are on the side, which is kind of cool, because if you're drawing and you're right-handed like me, you can actually manipulate these sliders using your fingers pretty easily, or undo and redo. But frankly, I just use my fingers for the shortcuts for undo and redo when I'm using the app. There's also a smudge tool. So let's just paint something here. There's a smudge tool, which I never use. You can pick any brush to be your smudge brush, and then go ahead and smudge your drawing. So if for whatever reason you wanted to, let's actually use a color here. If for whatever reason you wanted to smudge this, you could pick that and smudge. There's also the eraser. So tapping any one of these allows you to pick a specific brush to be an eraser. So any brush can be an eraser, meaning if I want to take this water brush, for example, and erase, I can use that to then erase and create some kind of cool textured leftover thing if I wanted to, or just clear the whole thing out. Next up, we have the layers window, which gives us an overview of the layers that we have. Now, just some really cool stuff here. If I tap once, I get this pop fly out menu bar, so I can rename the layer, okay, which gives me the keyboard, so I can say hello world, hit enter, and that's now my hello world layer. I can clear, or I can fill the layer with the color that's selected. We'll get to colors in just a sec. I can also select the contents of the layer if there's something there, or turn on perspective assist. Let's turn that off. Perspective assist will work if I have perspective turned on. Where is that? Perspective guide. And now I can turn on my perspective assist so that when I draw, let's pick a pencil here. All right, so now when I draw, all my lines are going back to those vanishing points. Pretty cool, right? So again, if you just want, looks like it's not totally perfect, which is fine. I don't really use this perspective tool, but if you wanted to have that, you can turn that on and it'll help you. Now they do say once you download the feature that it is a beta feature, the perspective assist, so expect there to be some irregularities that happen as you use the app. I can also adjust the blending mode just by tapping this little N on the layer. Okay, and you have modes to darken, lighten, for contrast, difference, color. So all the stuff that you're used to in Photoshop, if you use Photoshop or an app like Painter or even Sketchbook Pro, you've got those layer blending modes right there. If I tap this little circle in the top right, I've got the color icon, which allows me to, or color window rather, which allows me to pick a color. So around here is my hue. I can adjust my saturation and brightness by just going around in a circle. Personally, I'm not a huge fan because I don't really have a way. I use white and black a lot in my renderings, and I don't have a way to pick a pure white. But they do have some built-in palettes here, and you can make your own palette if you want. So if I go back to my palette, I can... Oh, there I can pick white by just typing in the value, and it looks like I got kind of lucky, but I can apply these colors. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, that's not working. Oh, double click, that's what it was. Double click on that little square, and now, or click rather, and now I have that color added to my palette. So you can make your own color palette if you're used to using certain colors in a specific drawing or rendering. So now let's go back to the gallery and I'll show you a couple things that I've worked on or am working on. So if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen this sketch, and this is a sketch that I did on the iPad Pro in Procreate, and it's a sketch of a jacket. I've just got 2 layers here, 3 layers, if you include the background. I can turn it on and off and you can see, but this was just all done with the HB pencil in the program. And what's really cool in terms of doing real work is I was able to just whip this out of my backpack, do a quick 5-minute sketch, and then when I needed to do that heavy lifting, which is, you know, bringing textures and that kind of stuff, because I didn't really have a ton of time, I just threw it into Photoshop and then finished it up. Now, why does this matter? Well, again, the iPad Pro, depending on how you work, can be amazing. For me, the convenience is a huge plus. The lightness of the device, the battery life, the responsiveness of the stylus is enough for me to consider this. Think of it like a pad of paper, a digital pad of paper that you can take around with you. But this pad of paper also lets you browse the internet, check your email. It allows you to render if you want to take a little bit more time. It's kind of like a full art studio. So in that sense, to me, it's been incredibly valuable this week. Here's another example of something that I worked on the iPad Pro. And again, if you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw this one. So this is a sketch that I did while I was on vacation with my family, actually doing some real work. And just wanted to sketch a hot rod. And really, I just wanted to test and see how much I could do on the iPad Pro while on the road. So none of this was done with Photoshop. None of this was done with the help of any PC or desktop applications. Everything you see here was created in Procreate. And I'm not exactly sure how long it took because I kind of did it in between being at Disneyland with my family and being on airplanes or traveling or whatever. So in any case, this was really fun to work on, and I'm pretty impressed with the results. Like I said, I've had to rethink the way that I do things in some regard, but in any case, it's been incredibly useful. Here's another one that I did while on vacation, just a quick spaceship speed painting sketch, okay? And again, none of this was done in Photoshop, all in Procreate. And so for me, the biggest challenge has been breaking some habits, not because they're bad habits, but because I have to think differently. This isn't a computer so much as it is a personal art studio for me. So I'm trying to change the way I think about interacting with the device so that my expectation isn't the same as a computer. Now, for some of you, that's a complete deal breaker, and I totally understand. But for me, as an artist who works with my hands and I'm trying to just capture quick ideas quickly, the iPad Pro with Procreate has been incredibly useful. So that's my 2 cents and my quick review of Procreate. There are some great things about the app, but there are also some things that kind of bug me about it. But so far, it's been my go-to drawing app on the iPad. Now, what I'd like to do in the coming days and weeks perhaps is continue to show you other apps that I've used and ways that I'm doing real work on the iPad. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to shoot me an email at sketchthis@sketchaday.com. And you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/sketchaday or on Instagram at sketchaday.com. Thanks for watching, and you can also leave a comment below. All right, so if you want to get in touch with me, just leave a comment below and I'll respond to you there. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time right here on Sketch A Day.